meeting for January 17th. If the clerk could please call the roll.
Anderson,
Here.
Baldwin,
Here.
Dean,
Here.
Gardner,
Here.
Muncy,
Here.
Stanton,
Here.
Here.
Great. Any agenda changes at this time? No agenda changes or deletions. Any guest speakers today? Anyone online for guest speakers? Okay, it's pretty quiet in here. Public comment on agenda items only. There doesn't appear to be anybody in the room. Anybody online, Jamie?
nope. That's just-
All right, so we'll just get right into discussion items. 6A, improvements in right-of-way. Is this Ryan Cummins? Thanks, Ryan.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Let's kick off your lengthy workshop agenda for today. That's good. Some good things on here to bring to you. Some things that we've been working on for quite a while. So, this afternoon, just wanted to bring to you kind of an updated ordinance and formal policy to you regarding installations in the right of way. As you recall, back this past summer, there were some concerns that came up where we received some complaints about properties that had heavier hardscaping walls and things of that sort that were placed into the right of way without proper permits. And so we kind of brought those things to you. You directed staff to kind of dig into it further. And so the city attorney prepared a report for you, kind of talked about some of the risks and things that you should consider in updating your ordinances and developing some sort of policy. And then your direction from there was based on the city attorney's report to have staff, including the city engineer and DPW superintendent, work on actually updating your ordinance consistent with the city attorney's report. So for you this afternoon is kind of the culmination of that work. We've all on the staff side worked very closely on it. The engineer's taken a look at it a number of times. So has the DPW superintendent. Scott Herbert's been very helpful in providing feedback and considerations from his team. And then certainly the city attorney from the risk perspective. So essentially what the ordinance does is amend your current streets ordinance that you already have in place. And the street by ordinance is essentially anything from kind of property line to property line. It's not necessarily the physical paved street as you might think that it is, essentially the city's right-of-way areas. So the updates to the ordinance would outline kind of a more formal application process, and then based on the policy that you establish and that recommended policy is attached, something would be potentially permitted, some things may be prohibited. Staff would essentially evaluate those requests. The ordinance language uses superintendent as the person responsible for issuing these permits. Well, superintendent is basically the city manager or his or her designee. So unless Mr. Heiss wants to have a little fun and do some of these permits, I assume that he'll continue to probably designate or delegate that to the zoning administrator for the time being. So that's not necessarily your DPW superintendent. So keep that in mind. We'll evaluate it based on the criteria that's in the ordinance there. There's 8 factors to consider. And then we could approve, deny, or approve with conditions, or we would have the flexibility to also bring it to you as a city council if we maybe have some concerns or feel like you should weigh in. There's also, the question kind of came up, well, what about somebody that maybe has installed something without, permits properly in the past? And so if it's an item that is prohibited by the current policy, there's a provision under K that essentially would allow that person to apply, and then gives you the ability as a city council to essentially kind of waive that policy requirement and maybe allow something that's already pre-existing. So that's kind of the very brief, short, high level of it. Happy to dive into any details or specific questions that you may have.
Yeah, anyone with questions?
Madam
Go
Mayor, if
ahead.
I may, I just have one quick question regarding K. That's one thing I was curious about. Do you think that there's going to be this huge swarm of people coming in before council for approvals, or do you think that number is going to, about where would you estimate that?
Well, I know there's 2 right now that have been, waiting on this process to be completed. So that's the only 2 that I'm aware of. I don't anticipate staff going out and trying to find and confirm whether or not there's been previous permits, but if we receive complaints or if an issue comes up.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions?
Can I just give an example? I'm just trying to picture what this is, and I wasn't here when it first came up.
Yeah, so the example that's kind of been maybe been in your meeting packet, recently, over on, kind of the corner of Mill and Simonson,
Yeah.
there's kind of a few different issues there. There's kind of a wall that was constructed going around the curb area.
Okay.
That's actually within the city right of way entirely.
Okay.
And then there's actually kind of back in the wooded area, it's actually still part of the city's right of way. There's actually a fountain that's constructed and
Okay.
some large boulders. So that's one example. The neighbor immediately next door, similar circumstance. There's a kind of a wall that was kind of built in the city's right of way. Neither one were installed by the current owners. It was kind of a one, I think, occurred during the COVID pandemic. Another maybe occurred before that. So
Cool. Thanks.
Ryan, just in regards to that, particular property, will that come to us then if they want, to get an application now that the ordinance is complete? If they want to keep that hardscaping there, they'll have to come to us?
correct,
Okay.
correct. Yep.
Why do the variances get granted by council, not zoning in that?
Well, this is, your public property. So I mean, this is your right of way. And so, it's not a structure that's being, built, I guess, for, on their property that would be subject to the zoning.
Okay.
Any other questions on this?
Well, I noticed that Chris Patterson's on the line. So Chris, hate to put you on the spot, but how does this compare with any other municipalities that your firm has worked with on this issue?
So I would say we talked about this before last year when we were developing this policy for council, and I do apologize for not being there in person. I got a personal family matter that took me away this morning, so my driving time caused me to be delayed, but appreciate the accommodation. When we worked at this last year, there are actually probably few municipalities that you would find, and essentially probably none but you that we represent, that have a policy that's like the one being proposed, that's written in the ordinance. The ordinance that, as it's stated sort of currently, which prohibits or sort of disavows the ability to construct personal infrastructure within the right of way, is pretty much the consistent position that most municipalities take. But that also is a little bit different in that the city does have unimproved portions where they're not using the entire right of way. You don't have complete sort of street and gutter, streetscape in certain areas. So you are a little bit unique. So when we worked on this last year with Ryan, when we presented it to council, you are not the only municipality in Michigan that has a process set up that is similar to what's being proposed here. So we did look at, my memory is that there was a couple over southeast Michigan in the Metro Detroit area. There were other areas even north of Saugatuck that have similar policies to deal with those rights of way that are not clearly as delineated. You're also in certain rights of way not using the entire defined right of way. And so I wouldn't, so that's, I guess, kind of directly answers at least your question. I mean, we developed a policy to deal with sort of current issues you have going on, allow people to make requests as this moves forward. And I think the one thing that we discovered when dealing with this last year with the city is the best thing we wanted to do for council is to give transparency to the public and expectations for both city council and members who would want, like public property owners or private property owners who would want to apply, what the process looks like and what it would take for the city council to consider, or for the administrative superintendent to consider that this is an appropriate improvements to be had in your street right of way. I think at the end of the day, as I'm sure you're all aware, I mean, the goal of this is to really protect the city's rights of way. You want them, even if you're not completely improving them now, for the future. And so we're basically coming up with a system to grant temporary licenses. And we're trying to also balance property owners that you have that have constructed in your right of way, have transferred ownership of those parcels now. So you have successor owners who have improvements. We're trying to balance sort of hardship that would be against them if we asked everybody to remove pieces in the right of way, with a process and sort of in a formal application mechanism for them.
All right.
Thanks.
Gregory?
Forgive me if this sounds like a dumb question, but if somebody has a permit and approves the hardscaping that they do have, and we find that, we approve it, they sell their house a couple years down the road and somebody else moves in. Does that permit go with the new owners? Does it stay where it's at? I mean, does that make sense, sir?
Question.
Or would it have to be disclosed to the new owner and then they would have to get another permit?
Correct. So it would go to the next property owner.
So it would continue with
Yep.
that property, no matter who owns it?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And I had a
Yeah.
question, if I read it correctly, it is allowable to have a sprinkler system. And what if down the line, we decide we want parking there, in a sprinkler system? Will we, I mean,
Good question.
does the city have to pay for, if they put a sprinkler system in and we paved over top of it, and what does that look like?
Right. So essentially, I mean, the current ordinance already allows for, or indicates that, hey, if you install something within the right of way, we could tell you, yep, you need to remove it, and that your cost. So essentially, that process would remain the same if the city needs to make an improvement later on.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's always in there, and that's good. So even if we approve something, if down the line we need to add parking or whatever it might be, curbs, things, we're covered to be able to do that.
Right. And if it's something that's like more extensive and we're concerned about it, there isn't like an escrow deposit that we also could collect now. If we have concerns that, hey, we might run into issues later with them not being willing to remove it. So we have the dollars to actually use so that's not at a cost to us.
Any-
One
any
additional
other-
comment on that point, if I may, when this was proposed and discussed at the September work session, we also sort of assumed that from a licensing perspective, there's a permit/license that comes with this. It's more than just the sort of actual policy that you're going to be approving and looking at. That license will be very similar. Kind of what we've compared it to is the ability to have available sidewalk in use of patios, which those licenses are all revocable. We'll have a notice process and sort of work with the property owner, but ultimately the permit that gets issued under this sort of regulatory scheme will allow you to revoke and rescind and require them to remove those installations to the extent that you need it because you want to expand parking or you want to improve the road service, et cetera. So there's another sort of legal document that will be created if this policy is adopted that would actually end up implementing it. And that's what the property owners would sort of be holding on to. And that's what the city would be recording for those specific addresses would be a permit.
Great. If there's nothing further, we can move on to the next item. That would be 6B, the zoning amendments to the waterfront, page 9 in your packet.
All right, well, and another item that your planning commission has worked really hard on this past year was a huge priority of theirs, and then was really a priority of your strategic planning that you did not this past December, but December before, where you were looking at preserving your waterfront and wanted kind of a long-term vision for commercial and residential waterfront development. And so, as you recall, a moratorium was established for development along the waterfront. That's been extended a couple times by you as a council while the planning commission has been conducting this work. And so the culmination of their work is before you this afternoon. And so I'm happy to go into as much detail as you would like. David Jurasik, our consulting planner, unfortunately wasn't able to be at the work session this afternoon, but I'm happy to answer specific questions that you have. But I'll just kind of run you through just a very general kind of timeline of how we maybe arrived here and just kind of some very high level changes. And then if you want to dig into any details, we can certainly do that.
That
So
sounds great.
yeah. So the planning commission kind of started out with one, it certainly made it a priority to do a lot of good quality, public engagement. And so that involved a couple of different surveys and pop-up community events. And so we had over 600 survey responses. About 3/4 of those folks were either full-time or part-time residents on those two surveys. So we had really good survey responses and feedback, really good feedback from the in-person pop-up events that your various planning commissioners participated in. So Dave took that data and then did kind of an assessment of the project areas. So that was your Water Street North, Water Street South, and resort zoning districts. Kind of did a deep dive to take a look at which properties are maybe likely to be redeveloped in a short period of time that you might see something coming soon. Evaluating the public feedback that was received, and then certainly the planning commission feedback to assess the area and kind of say, hey, what would really kind of accomplish what the community was ultimately looking to see. And what we kind of heard, as far as theme wise was, waterfront views was important, or kind of access to the waterfront seemed to be kind of really common themes that came through. So Essentially what the proposed ordinance before you does is takes most of the parcels in your Water Street North and Water Street South zoning districts and rezones them into a new waterfront preservation district. And so that district increases setback requirements, has kind of requirements for maximum building width, and then took a look at your special land use standards to design some design and aesthetic criteria for the waterfront. And then took a look at the different uses to determine which ones maybe should be continue to be a permitted use, which one should be a special land use going forward. Kind of some minor tweaks to the resort district as it related to maximum building heights. If there was a developer that perhaps had some concerns with meeting some of these, dimensional standards that are being proposed, the PUD standards within your zoning ordinance are proposed to be updated. And a PUD essentially is an overlay that allows your applicant potentially some flexibility from the zoning ordinance requirements, but it's kind of a little bit of a give and take there. And so we added some PUD language that essentially would incentivize access to the waterfront. So if they needed some relief from setbacks, for instance, and they were willing to provide, waterfront walkway access throughout the property, that could be a situation where maybe they were giving some flexibility from the dimensional standard that's in the district. So after several months, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on these proposed changes, received some feedback. Based on that feedback, they held another meeting and had some further discussion. There was a request for kind of some charts to kind of show a side-by-side comparison of what's being changed, what was becoming more restrictive, what was actually becoming less restrictive, because some of the changes actually are going to be less restrictive. And then after that discussion, the Planning Commission recommended what's before you on a 6-0 vote. There was one member that couldn't make it that night. So that is the really quick short of multiple months of work, but happy to answer any specific questions that you may have.
First of all, Planning Commission, this was a ginormous task to take on, and we just really appreciate you taking it on because it was a long process. Loved the input that you got from the community, but wow, it took a lot to get to this point. But I bet there's some questions. So do you guys have any questions on what's in front of us? And I know we also had a 183-page packet, so if you
Yep.
don't feel confident.
It looks great. I spent a lot of time looking at this, trying to find something, some kind of mistake. But it looks really good. To me, I have not found any flaws. I think you guys have all done a great job. Thank you, Ryan.
I would echo that. I'm happy that we finally addressed it. I mean, I know that there's just a lot that before used to just kind of go on with a handshake or whatever, and I didn't think that was great. I trust confidence in our planning commission, and I'm ready to approve this.
Since we're calling it a district, it's a district that's also within the historic district, correct?
Correct.
So, but the gateways that applicants will go through will remain planning, or will they be planning and historic? Both. Okay. So there's two gateways. So it's really solid protection for our waterfront and our historic character. So the team did a great job on this.
So just a clarifying question, if I could, on page 13, 4D, it talks about placement of garages and loading areas. If there happens to be a new build with condos, is there no parking requirement, or is there, could you explain that? Maybe clarify it for me?
Yeah, so right now, your current districts, Water Street North, Water Street South, they don't have minimum parking requirements. So certainly some developers are going to probably want to provide some level of parking if they're going to have residential units or something like that. And so the feedback that we received from the surveys was that there wasn't a desire to have parking in the kind of front yard setback areas.
When you say front yard, it's towards the water, correct? Or
Towards the street.
towards the street?
Towards the
Okay.
street, yep.
Thank you.
The water side's gonna be a waterfront setback or a rear yard setback. So towards the streets, and then there's another restriction on, just from a kind of maybe an aesthetic standpoint, a little bit of not having garage doors that were intended for parking a car facing Water Street as well, or Culver in this case, although we took out the parcels and, yeah, we took out the first block of Culver. So, so if somebody wanted to do, typical example might be like a brewery or something like that, that have
Right.
garage doors that open up. That would still be something that, that type of garage door wouldn't be a concern. It's just for vehicle parking. Those types of garages would be the
Okay.
issue.
Okay. But there is parking allowed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Gosh, anything else? If there was one on page 16 as well about, single-family dwellings not permitted, as far as a new build. What if somebody has a property for sale that used to be more like an inn bed and breakfast that they're trying to change to a single-family unit? How
That
does
would
that work?
happen.
Is it grandfathered in?
If it's an existing bed and breakfast now and they wanted to do a change of use to a single family dwelling and this ordinance was in place, they wouldn't be able to convert it to a single family
Okay.
dwelling.
Okay, so they need to be made aware of that, or hopefully they know about that.
Like what was done at the,
It's at the one by the barge. What's, what is it?
Wickwood?
no, it
Not
started with a B.
Bayside.
Bayside.
Yeah.
So at one point, they had it for sale. I don't know if it has sold, but they were trying to sell it as a single family dwelling,
Uh-huh.
and separate the two structures basically that are kind of connected as one unit.
Right.
But they'll have to apply for that. Is that special land use, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, it would depend on what type of use they're looking to change it to. So we would look at a change of use permit at the very least if, and then depending on the type of use they were looking to change it to and whether or not there was any site improvements that were proposed, and then that may trigger a special land use process.
Yeah.
But yeah, now if it's an existing single family dwelling that exists on the waterfront and it's single family today and this ordinance goes through, they are going to be legally non-conforming and be able to continue that until such point that use is given up.
So, not any of my business, but if they want to ask questions on that, I'm sure you
So,
guys can handle that one.
so the house next to the annex, is used to be called the Bentley Bed and Breakfast. And that was purchased by the DeVosses, I believe.
I know
right?
which one, I think, the like white and light brick one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that used to be a bed and breakfast.
because it's like 2 units-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have recourse. I mean, they can come and apply for a variance and special land use, which, and then if you, you know what I mean? To me, if I'm sitting on the board and they said, hey, it's an old bed and breakfast, we want to buy it and move in a single family and fix it up and all that, I can't imagine why any.
I think part of it was
Yeah.
that the language said not permitted as opposed to special land use. And so what I was just curious about, like, you absolutely can't do that because it says not permitted.
Correct. You wouldn't be able to convert it to that use. I
So
mean,
they can't really
yeah.
come to us and say, hey, can I please?
Oh,
It
there's
says it's
no,
not
there's no
permitted.
variances and so. if it's
Well,
not-
you could they could have certainly apply for a use variance from the zoning board of appeals. and
Okay.
They'd have to meet
That's-
the
yeah,
core
that's-
Right.
standards and, yeah,
I feel like you
certainly.
always have that option on legally, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what that's there for,
Right.
yeah.
That's exactly what it's there for. I mean, the idea is that do you want to, in your waterfront districts, encourage people to build single family dwellings in your commercial zoning districts down here? I
Right.
mean, if you think about it, if you were looking at it from just like a completely new, fresh site perspective, right? Like
Yeah.
across the street, for example, I'm not picking on them, but it's a
Right.
parking lot. Would you want somebody to build a big, huge, single family story, home?
Giant home, sure.
Maybe some people would, maybe some folks
Yeah.
wouldn't, but probably not the best use of the land for your commercial zoning district.
Okay.
Mix of uses might be better there.
Go.
So I'm seeing this also, I'm sorry, this also covers Culver Street as well. And I know there's a residential house there. It's not for sale yet, right next to Del Sol. If,
Part of the Culver Street has been removed from the Water Street.
oh, it has,
So, yeah,
okay,
the ones that are on the street are not part of it, but
Right.
anything behind it, like the condos behind it, would be.
okay, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie's on it. She's got kind of the map, but at the.
Oh, I
planning
see where
commission-
it's blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
yeah. Ah, like a little island there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Planning Commission pulled that out for now. They do want to do some further analysis on that particular block, and I think some of the other zoning districts, just for some, finding ways that maybe we can combine districts, but
Right.
Any other questions? I feel like I'm
Yeah.
asking too many.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just more of an observation, having been a part of this process all the way through the public hearing in November, as well as with Commissioner Anderson. There was a lot of work and effort put into this, a lot of public input. And the interesting thing to me was at the end of it, with that meeting in November where we had, how many people in the
A
audience?
lot of people.
Didn't know about this.
Yeah.
And so it's a learning process, right? You have to always figure out ways. We thought we did a great job getting out to the public, right? Talking with people. Interestingly enough, after the meeting, I talked with a couple of people that were here and basically set the record straight, because the misinformation that was getting out by certain parties was that this was going to prohibit them from doing what they're doing today with their property.
Yeah.
So that was corrected. I had conversations with a couple of business owners, but it's just another example of where, we have to be very thoughtful, and the planning commission, I think, did a great job with this. But there's always an opportunity to miss the mark. And so that I probably think has since died down because the conversations that probably some of us had with other people. But it was a great effort. And I think that, it to the point that was made by Councilmember Dean, and also by Mr. Cummins, is that there's a reason why there's zoning districts, right? We don't necessarily want to have private homes all along a commercial waterfront. That's for the benefit of the people that come to town and be able to see the water. So, this is all part of, sometimes it's just not an appropriate place to have a certain type of property. That's what zoning's about. These can always be changed with the appropriate process. So I'm just very proud to be a part of it. I think it's a good change. Nothing's perfect. I'm sure there'll be adjustments to it after it gets adopted, but I was proud to be a part of the process.
Anyone else? Ryan, thank you. Now on to item 6C, fee schedule update, right-of-way permit fee. Again, Ryan.
All right, so this relates to your first item, and assuming you do end up passing the ordinance update, staff's bringing forth a recommendation to update your fee schedule so that we have a fee for these new permit applications. And so the fees essentially, if it's just like a review by me, very consistent with, I shouldn't say just by me, if it's a staff review, the price of 150 is consistent with like a sewer connection application where I have to review it and I have time involved with it, but I also am involving our engineer or Department of Public Works in their review. These right-of-way permits are going to involve both of their review as well, so it helps recoup some of that cost. If it's something that has to go to the council, it's a little more expensive in the sense that, we have to prepare a staff report, probably have John Moxley, our engineer, attend a meeting as well and have costs related to that, so it helps recoup some of those costs. And then the tree permit, as and something I should have added when we discussed the ordinance. So anything related to like trees or shrubs is not covered by that ordinance. There's a separate ordinance that covers those items. So there's a tree permit requirement that's within your zoning ordinance to plant a tree within the right of way. But there's not a fee established in your zoning or within your fee schedule. So proposing a fee there as well.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, on the tree permit. So give me an example where that $100 would be something that a property owner would have to be paying. Just give me a scenario where that would be applied.
Well, say outside of your home, between the sidewalk and the street, you're like, I want to plant, 2 big, beautiful trees to grow with the community. And so you would submit a tree permit application and pay your $100 fee. I would be involved with reviewing it, make sure it meets zoning ordinance, or I'm sorry, not zoning. I'm so used to the zoning. Meet the code of ordinances, and then in that case, our Department of Public Works superintendent also review. He's going to be checking tree species, make sure that there's not any impact on maybe other utilities that are in the area, and we're not gonna have tree root issues or something along those lines. So, and then just processing it in general.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we good with that one? All right, on to 6D, Parks and Recreation 5-year plan update. That is on page 32. Helen or Ryan?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I can fight with Helen.
You can go ahead and start.
Okay.
I'll lead in.
Okay.
So in your packet, page 32, 183.
Yeah.
Has a cover page. And so we're talking about the 5 years park and recreation plan, which has been discussed for about a year now. Been working on this for about a year. And so I could read this cover page, but it's right in front of you. So, Madam Mayor, Do you want me to read through this?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all had a chance to
Yeah.
read it.
I can offer the highlights of it is that this year for the 5-year plan, the city of Saugatuck partnered with the tri-community area. So it's the city of Saugatuck, Saugatuck Township, the village of the city of Douglas, or however.
City of the village.
City of the village of Douglas, and then weird, and the school district. And we partnered to put together this plan. We worked with Viridis, and I have to say, I am so pleased with the output. I think that they did a fantastic job. They were really great to work with. And we had tons of community involvement, open houses. We just closed our 30-day public input period. That was posted in the newspapers, online, email blasts, all that stuff for all the communities. And got some good feedback, and we're ready to go. I will say so. The primary, not the primary reason, a big reason that you need this, you cannot apply for any grant without having a 5-year plan. And that's why it has to be adopted. There's a lot that goes around, that goes into it. So we cannot get any grants without this being taken care of. And that's a big deal. And secondly, it's just nice for the community to have a resource to go to and see the things that, there's things that are, objectives, there's things that are goals, and there's big lofty ideas that, if money were no object and you could just do whatever, and all of that is included as part of the 5-year plan. Very proud of it, and it's been wonderful working with the other communities and with our consultants and getting this done. It's been an effort to get over the finish line, but here we
Yeah.
are.
Again, just tremendous work by everyone who was involved with this. I know long process getting this all done. It's fabulous. It's a long, plan that a lot of people hopefully will have a chance to read through it. I know I did when, the plan that was out, 5 years prior to this, before I got on council, there was an extensive plan as well. This is beautiful. And it gives us an idea of what we need to do going forward. One of those things being is that there's a public hearing, right, on Monday. We have
Yes.
to have a public hearing. That's part of this process, right? And how does that work exactly?
My understanding is it'll be part of our council meeting, that you'll open and close a public hearing.
Mhm.
We had a similar thing. I can't remember what we did most recently. Planning, I think, does it. Yeah, where you say, now we're gonna have a public hearing, and you put it together as part of your packet. But yeah, so the public hearing will be on Monday.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the 5-year plan, if you had a chance? And listen, if you didn't have a chance to read through the whole thing, please take a look at it through the weekend. And then, by Monday, as the public hearing happens, if you have, more things that you want to adjust to it or anything, I don't know that that's something that will be.
Adjustment period is
really great.
closed. Yeah, the
Yep.
adjustment period is closed. with the public
Just
hearing.
one quick comment. I mean, this is outstanding work and it's really well written and there's great data and information here because the overall Tri-Communities Master Plan is coming up to be refreshed. And this, I think, will really help with that and to have more current demographic information. I mean, just.
I was
had-
blown away by their ability to make a story out of what could otherwise be
It's-
really dry data.
It's a,
you know?
it's a good read.
is, yeah.
And I think this is a great reference, sort of like the Tri-Communities Master Plan. I mean, something that
Yeah.
we should all read and be familiar with and kind of flip through from time to time. So way to go, everybody who worked on it.
They did a nice job.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will, take note the fact that if you've thought about, if you have young kids in the school system and there's just not enough soccer fields or not enough softball field, they address that. And that is a concern and they're looking forward to that. The talk of having a community center, that's on there too. Yes, we need more indoor options. And it's definitely a desire of the community to have some sort of community center at some point. But I just thought it was great that all of those ideas that you hear from the community, it's all in there.
Mhm.
It's all in there.
Along with accessibility, what parks have what accessibility and maybe we need to improve on some here or, yeah, I like it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So the extent of action on Monday will just be to have the public hearing.
Yep.
That'll be the extent of it.
Yep, and then for us to,
Then we adopt it,
then we adopt it.
and then we're able to send it to DNR and all the relevant parties.
Okay, got it.
All right, moving on.
I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead. Logan.
Really excited about this work. This is amazing. Super well done. And I'm just looking at this tri-community facilities matrix and I'm gonna use this as a way to interact with the community. It's amazing. One question I have, I'd be curious, specifically the question is what qualifies something to be listed on here? Would be that, and what I'm getting at is I see the airport properties listed under the city of Saugatuck. And it says it has nature trails and whatnot. Like, if I wasn't familiar with that, I might go out there and be like, whoa,
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
to then be really confused because it's not really publicly accessible. right now.
Yeah, and that's
So-
probably the one that's not publicly accessible, but it is part of it's a public domain, right? The citizens of Saugatuck own it. It belongs in the listing of public domain. So I'm sure we could have probably done that differently as far as not putting in the trails, but I also, I don't know, you can write it one way and also it's in there that's our intent is to have something opened up to the public at some point.
Madam
Yeah.
Mayor, I can add. So part of this process is to just vision things that are possible. And if you write that into this plan, then you are able to get grants.
Oh, yeah,
Something's
that's
not
kind of
in
what I was
here.
wondering.
If
Was it-
something's not in here, you cannot get grants. for
Does it just open doors for grants?
Yes,
is
if
possibly
you
like
don't
the
have
thing,
something
if that's-
specifically called out, you cannot get a grant for it.
Oh, interesting.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
That's
There we go.
true.
Is it? Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So, I
Good.
mean.
Yeah.
You could put down like, ice cream stand at the chain ferry.
But it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But it doesn't
Right.
exist,
Okay.
but.
But
Like
it's
bathrooms at
a
Kaufman
hope or
Park.
a thought.
Bathrooms at
Yeah.
Kaufman Park, I think is a really good example of that, because I am gonna try to look into some grants, possible grants for that. If you don't have something specifically called out that you might want a bathroom at Kaufman Park,
Oh,
in there, then you wouldn't be
Look
able
at
to
that.
apply.
Yeah, even if it was low on our priority
Right.
list in strategic planning, it just is
You gotta
there. in
Take it out
case
5
something-
years.
Yeah, yeah, we
It
have
might be
5
low
years.
Right now, but it might not be in 3 years.
Yeah.
question answered.
Yeah,
The more you list, the more your optionality.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
but that's a great question. Yep.
Okay.
Anything else, you guys, on that? All right, on to item 6E. I just asked for this to be on here. This is not an action item from Monday. I just wanted Ryan to update us on anything with the AT&T project.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I did make the request, at the council's direction, for the ask of, I think it was $85,000 in total. Including the, funding for a restroom, sand dune, environmental revegetation, and then, painting the radome. Have not heard back from them, but everything's in queue. We're in communication, so
Okay.
I think this is good.
Good. Like I said, there's not an action item by any means, but I thought it was at least, anybody have any questions? Ryan, as far as that's concerned, he has submitted those requests, but waiting to hear back. Go ahead, Gregory.
Something happens, they don't, well, but what if they don't bite? They decide, you know what, maybe this is gonna be too big of a project for us, and probably not because of the 85,000, but because of whatever.
Even if they scrap the whole thing altogether.
Right, right. Do we have, you know, I like Russ's idea of having an infrastructure or an idea of having some kind of committee or something for technology, our future with technology and where it's going to be. What, could we start, you know, offering that idea to other people or another tower or something? I mean, well, how do we get internet out there? You know, if something happens and AT&T backs out?
I don't want to be rude or interrupt any discussion here. I would just caution everyone on the council that, you know, if we are in a negotiation, we probably shouldn't talk about next steps in that negotiation.
Fine,
If,
that's fair.
if you guys.
Yeah, I
kind of- If you
understand.
hear where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry.
That's fair. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Any other questions in regards to that? All right. Moving on to, item 6F, city manager review process. Ryan, did you want to go over this or do you want me to work on
I
it?
think it would be, most fair you did that.
Yeah.
I'd be
So-
biased.
Yeah, I just wanted to go over a little bit about what the process used to look like and, you know, whether we want to see any changes to that process. First of all, I emailed, every one of you would have gotten an email about the city manager evaluation form that we've used since I've been on council. What usually happens is Ryan does a self-evaluation from that same form. We also do those evaluations, and I want to make sure you guys have enough time to think about that, give it plenty of time, because I know you don't want to just hurry up and do something like this. You want to, you know, put some good thought into it. And then traditionally, the city mayor, mayor pro tem, and the former mayor usually go over all of those and come up with, you know, basically an overall evaluation where we can pile all of those things and then talk about whether there's any kind of a raise that we would like to offer or what it looks like at that point. We go into closed session when Ryan makes that ask. And it's usually around, well, the last one was around the end of February. The year before it was in March. So we have some time. I know there has been some questions from several city council members about the 360 review. If you're not familiar with that, people who've been in the corporate world educated me a little bit about what the 360 review is. And it's basically getting feedback from not just us, but from, coworkers, subordinates, peers, different people you are in communication with on a regular basis. I had an opportunity, I reached out to Frank Walsh, who is with Walsh Municipal Services. He has helped us with recruiting city managers and different people within city government. He's kind of an expert in all things. I also reached out to Marilyn, who did our strategic planning, asked her if she's ever done a 360 review for cities. And then, just did some research with the Michigan Municipal League. Frank has said that he is not in favor of 360 reviews at a city level. It's just not something that he sees other cities doing. Marilyn has done them at a corporate level, but she's never done them for a city. But she is reaching out to colleagues of hers just to see, what that looks like, from a city perspective. So, I just want to make sure that city staff members feel supported and we're doing the best that we can for city employees. But I also, want to let you know that I'm still in the process of learning more about this. And if you'd be willing to just give me some time on learning a little bit more about that. But I did want you to have the forms in case that's just the way we're going to do it this year, or if we want to change the way we might want to do these reviews. So if you could give me a little time, I would just need a little bit more time to research that as far as reaching out to other experts. Like I said, Marilyn's going to come back to me if she hears anything from her colleagues. Do you guys have any questions on that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I thank you very much for putting this on the agenda. I'm one of the council members that reached out to the mayor. So timeline is, when will the process begin for us to complete the form that we're going to be using? When does it need to be returned? Just so we have a sense of how much time we have to complete that. Number two is that I know past practice has been to have the mayor pro tem and former mayor be that
Kind of like a small group, yeah.
group, right? I don't know if that's something we want to revisit for any reason. So the other thing on the 360 degree feedback, and I've been asking for this for a couple of years. And the reason why I think it's important is because me as a council member, I don't spend a lot of time with the city manager. I frankly don't. I just don't spend that much time with him. So for me to be able to evaluate the performance of any city manager or really any manager is how do the people that work with him most or her most, what's their opinion? What's been their experience? Because to answer the questions that are in the form are difficult for me because I just don't have enough experience with the manager to answer. I mean, I can give some snippets of things, which I've done for the past two. But that's why I've been driving this because I've seen it work successfully in my own position as well as others. And sounds like some other corporate experience too has shown the benefit. That's why I've been a real driver for this because I think it's important for us to, because I just don't have that.
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah, as far as, it's not going to be on the agenda for Monday. I just wanted to be able to have this discussion, in a workshop setting. Ryan, do you have any idea of when you would like to complete your self-evaluation? We have plenty of time, so I just, I'm not putting a deadline on it quite yet until I kind of figure out in your timeline when you would like to have your self-evaluation done.
I would appreciate it by the end of next month, so.
Okay.
End of
You would like that review and everything completed by the end of next month? Okay.
I'd also like to echo what Russ had said. I just don't have the time. I'm looking, and thanks for sending this to me again.
Yeah.
I remember doing this last year and I felt the same way, that I just didn't feel like I was prepared. And the last year, I work every day and I just don't have time to be here. His, interpersonal relations, I have no idea. How you are with customer service, I don't know that either. I'm just not here.
Okay.
Thank you for putting this to us so that we can maybe talk about it a little bit more.
Okay. And like I said, if I could have just a little bit more time with some
Maybe I
people
should-
getting back to me about some things.
Maybe I should start hanging out here for the day. I mean, it's just,
I'm close to elections.
Yeah. Logan, did you have something?
Belabor the point, but I just,
Got through college.
I appreciate that process and that there's a form. I just personally at this point don't really feel informed well enough to like give that a good effort. So what I would be looking, if I would like to see some exploration of the idea of some kind of 360
Yeah.
evaluation. If that's not possible, or even if it is, I'd be curious to see, you know, I wasn't around for the benchmarking and the goal setting, you know, for last year. I'd be curious like what that, if there's any documentation on that and, you know, kind of how to measure and kind of check in. Because we could, you know, if there was that sort of documentation, we could look at what's been done, what goals were met, what goals weren't met.
Yeah. Is that
that's-
something I can share, Scott? Being that it was in closed session, some of it. I mean, I don't know. I'm asking.
So that's a question. Does that exist? If so, is it possible?
Yeah,
to be
some
shared?
benchmarks to say, hey, yeah.
I could defer to council, but certainly I don't think the past reviews are protected in any way. So I think for, particularly for new council members, they could probably see last year's evaluations, if that's helpful, because, you know, a lot of us, I believe, did put sort of areas where we could see improvement or objectives that we'd like to see. I think even Ryan in his past evaluation, which is probably even the most useful piece, because he did lay out his own objectives. And certainly, I think that could be shared with council to sort of gauge that. I think the other thing I would offer the council, particularly the new members, is to reach out to constituents and ask them what their interactions with city staff have been, and, you know, what the level of customer service they've been achieving has been. I mean, I tend to get my 360 reviews on how we're doing as a team by talking to our neighbors. So that's kind of the process I've used.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, because when I was a new council member, I was like, I don't really feel qualified
Right.
to, you know, take some of these things on, but, you know, talking to residents and people, you know, around town.
I mean, the other pieces, Mayor, sorry,
Yeah.
the other pieces I look at are just the facts, the numbers. You know, I look at our finances, you know, those are things that are important. I look at what's been accomplished, what hasn't been accomplished, and those are the kind of things that I add in, you know, those are the things you can kind of get without hanging out here. Because even as mayor, I think the staff will agree. I mean, I would come in as needed, but I didn't hang out here because that's not the mayor's role under
Right.
a strong manner. No, but it's just not the, you know, it's not the mayor's role to sit, you know, with his head over the shoulder of any member of staff. You know, he's the CEO and you're the chairman of the board. So yeah, you know, you should, all of us, be talking to our shareholders, which the people that put us in office,
Yeah.
on how they think the city staff are performing.
So, you know, I'll make sure to communicate with you guys if I get any more, you know, information from Marilyn, because I think she was just a good resource. Frank Walsh was a good resource. Just people, experts in the field of municipalities. When it comes to this sort of review, it's just not my level of expertise, and I just needed to reach out to people who I felt were the experts. So.
I appreciate your thoughtfulness. I mean, it's great. This is, you know, our staff is, you know, that's so important to everything we do. And so making sure we equip them and support them the best we can, I think is probably one of the most important things we do. So good for you for taking time to think and reach out, and it's good.
All right.
Yeah, sorry, building
Thanks, you
on
guys.
that, really quickly, and I'm a little bit less interested in like what's occurred in the past with that, but just to use it as a frame of reference for how to establish some goals that we can say next year at this time, like, these are some serious wins, like, this is amazing. So just
Good.
curious about how we can get on the same page of building.
And I'll
towards that.
see what I can find as far as past, so I can pass those on to everyone. So, Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, and I had the benefit when I joined council is I was provided with the city manager's job description. That might be helpful to new folks too, just to understand kind of what the expectations are. I think that would be good to put in everybody's mailbox.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too. I don't remember what that is, and that was before I was on council.
I just read it somewhere.
And-
Is it on
and-
the website or something?
Is it on the website?
Somewhere.
And Mayor, for your benefit, just because once again, I'm big on getting data. You know, I utilized Mr. Walsh to do a comparative of salaries, you
Yeah.
know, because that was, once again, you know, I didn't know what the going rate was for any type of staff position, you know, in a city of this size.
I
with
pulled up
this-
that information when I was going over all of this, and I can certainly pass it along to everybody else.
Thank
So-
you.
So new members have it as well. And-
That bit of benchmarking, I think, is also helpful because, you know, we are competing for staff in the whole Midwest, frankly,
Yeah.
if not the nation. So
Good.
Yeah.
All right, if there's nothing else, we can move on to the next. Let's see, 6G. This is Arbor Day. This one's an easy one, not a lot of questions, but Jamie, I understand that we didn't do it last year, so we need
Uh-oh.
2 proclamations. Okay. And do you guys understand?
So we're doing it-
The tree.
Planted
I
a
remember
tree,
going to the
but
ceremony.
apparently we didn't approve a proclamation.
So we're gonna do it for 2023 and 24?
Yeah, just. so
Okay.
it's,
The proclamation for 23 gets submitted with the paperwork this year.
Okay,
Yeah, it's weird. So that's why you're approving this one. But yeah, you will approve 24, but that paperwork won't go into the next year.
that's funny.
It's a
And
little-
this, sorry, Jamie, I'm sorry, but this has implications for Tree City USA as
Right.
well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
The application is for Tree City USA.
Got it. Yep.
Does anybody have any questions, Logan?
Oh, no. I was thinking about the Tree City USA thing when we were talking about charging citizens $100 to put trees in their front yard.
Yeah.
And I understand that there's work that goes into approving trees. And I don't really have an opinion. I just kind of want to raise that up of like, we're Tree City USA. We should be really supportive of people planting trees in
Yeah,
there.
I think
But
we
I'm
just have
sure
to,
that it's like, you can't just have willy-nilly trees everywhere. I'm sure we need to do $100, but
So
Yeah.
I was-
I appreciate that observation, because when Russ asked that question, I talked about the planting, I didn't talk about the removal of trees. And then when I sat down, I'm like, well, maybe we make the fee, you know, cheaper to plant the trees, $25 a week. So that way, there's, you know, the knowledge that you have to obtain a permit and
Yeah.
something has to be reviewed. So maybe it's 20, yeah, I'm just throwing numbers out, you know, because the cost is the cost, but you as a council can make a policy decision to reduce costs or have no, you know,
I assume
charge at all.
we have
So-
to cover the cost of Miss Dig though, to come through there to make sure there's no utilities and things, correct? I assume that's why the cost is $100.
Combination of factors.
Yeah.
So, but if you wanted to, you know, as from a policy perspective, encourage tree planting by residents, then you know, you're right away, you could reduce that fee or have no fee at all, but then say, if you're gonna remove a tree from our right of way, we are gonna charge you our cost to review that.
Mhm.
I'm glad you raised this
Mhm.
because that was the one thing that you know, logically it makes perfect sense, but the optics are a bit
Mhm.
funny. And I like your suggestion. I mean, since we are in a workshop, I mean, this is
Yeah.
the good time to raise it. Personally, I like, you know, actually causing folks to come in, you know, so they don't put an invasive in or something that's a nightmare, you know, who wants like a black walnut right next to where we're.
Oh, no.
I deal with it every day. I've got one in my
We're
front
also
yard. It's
like-
horrendous. It's terrible.
But,
Those-
but maybe, I hate to use the word subsidized, but you know, kind of planting them $25, removing it, because that's actually where you get a lot of the complaints. Is
Mhm.
people remove trees and then their neighbors, I know one neighbor who's on somebody's committee who goes crazy every time a tree gets cut down.
No, not mentioned.
No, I will not mention his name.
Yeah,
I don't know, I mean, we're in a workshop, what do you guys think?
go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, Mr. Dean, that's a good question. And again, I just want to make sure I understand. This is for trees that are not in the public. These are for trees that are in the public right away.
Correct.
Yes, not
On
in
your private property, you can
no.
do
Yeah.
with the tree what you want.
Yes.
Right.
So, because we've,
Yes.
had examples in our neighborhood of trees that were brought down, which were, I just wasn't happy with it. But anyway, our superintendent of DPW is a tree guy. If you talk with Scott,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
a tree guy. And I think what is really important here is that the city have a process to encourage tree replacement as opposed to, you know, I think a minimal fee, if any, would be appropriate because we want people to continue to work that. I think what's really more important is the fact that, to someone's comment that, you know, if someone decides to put a tree in the public right of way, that they have a process they have to go through to make sure that it's cleared. We used to have the tree board, which used to do that, which was collapsed into the Parks and Public Works Committee. I don't know if there's been any activity there, but that was what that committee did, was to make sure to manage to keep this alive and keep it active and keep it in front of people. So I think that to me is kind of the bigger question is, what's the process that if I want to replace a tree in front of my house, what options do I have? Does the city have here's a list of trees that you can use or purchase to replace based on our needs and et cetera?
So in a nutshell, we're hoping to lower the fee for somebody who wants to plant a tree. What would we like it lowered to?
I think Ryan's spitball of $25, at least cover some of the costs. And I think it shows that it's not.
How does everybody else feel?
I'd
I'm
be in favor
seeing-
of that. Yeah.
I'm seeing nods. So we're talking $25 to plant a tree. If there is a tree removal in the right of way, we're going to keep it at $100.
I think
We
that's good.
we feel good about that. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that. You saved me a conversation with Brian.
Good.
We plant
great.
Michigan native trees. When we're planting trees, are they native Michigan trees?
I know Scott usually talks about that.
I'm not your expert on that, but I know
Yeah.
he was working on and in fact, he was borrowing from my friends in Grand Haven. We have a tree species list. So I think he was working on putting that
Yeah.
together. I can check with him on that.
Just in the past, I've worked with Scott Herbert on picking out trees for the right of way. And he's great. He picks out, and he also likes the ones that are messy. So, because then he doesn't have to deal with the mess.
Right.
So he's not a fan of willow trees, but they're real popular. So anywho. I know, I'm like, that's not going away, Scott. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're on to item 6H, street end license agreements. This comes up every year. If you guys are familiar, do you want to take this, Ryan, or Ryan Cummins? Page 55
Students,
in your
Jamie?
packet.
You want to hit this?
There's Jamie.
Surprise.
Paperwork, but I'll try to explain.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, yep, it's every year. It's based off of the CPI increase from the last year, which this year is 3.2%. I have a nice little chart Excel sheet that I use to calculate all those. You've got the location of the street ends, you've got the lessee, the leasee. I've got my 23 calculations there. And then the rate increase, how many, that's multiplied by how many license feet there are and the total charge for this year. I'll send those out, request payment, copy of insurance. And then we'll execute those. I'll get those back. They're 1-year leases, except for the few on the bottom. There's 4 that are 5-year lease agreements, which were renewed last year, but they pay yearly as well. You've got the Butler Place property, which also has a Cook Park. That's a Cook Park agreement for the boat slips over here. And you will see a deduction there, and that's because they maintain the park for the city.
Good. Does anybody have any questions about this, especially people who are new to this process?
I randomly was at the meeting last year when this came up.
Good.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, the item that I always kind of focus on here, well, 2 of them, one is that, and I think it's been added, is the actual leasee's name, so we know who's actually leasing the street ends.
Yeah.
And item number 10, maintenance. This is something I think just that the city needs to be more focused on, because the agreement requires that the person that leases the street end, and you can read it for yourself, there's been occasions where the street ends have not been maintained to this level.
Yeah.
So I think that's just something the city just needs to be better at, making sure that we're going down and talking to property leasees or whatever you want to call them because some of these street ends are just, they're the key to the waterfront in a lot of spaces downtown especially. So just opportunities to make sure it looks as best as it can.
Good.
So.
Good. Anyone else? All right, moving on to 6I, the Wicks Park boat slips. This is Jamie as well.
Okay, so yearly, we have a lottery for the Wicks Park boat slips that the city owns. I put your last 4 years rates on here, last 4 CPIs. Last time this was increased was 2022. It's currently 2,000 for a non-resident, 1,800 for a resident. It is taxpayer has priority, and after that would be a non-taxpayer. Typically get around like 22 to 24 applicants every year. And then I do a Zoom call lottery, so everyone can see me pulling the names out. And then I follow up with payments and execute the agreements, and so forth. And then we have, just monitor that they're following the lease agreements, and so do the residents, because they call me if anyone's not following rules like last year, so.
Yes. Yeah. Some of the rules being that some people have tried to operate a business,
Yes.
using some of the boat slips.
Other
There's been
people's boats.
issues with that, using other people's boats.
Boats, yeah.
There's been
Mhm.
various things that have happened. And does anybody have a problem with the current rate?
I was just going to mention, I support keeping the rate where it is because in 2021, if I recall correctly, there was some significant, or not significant, but there's some issues with the slips that were, the city invested some money to bring them up and repair them. And I just don't see a compelling reason to increase the rate at this point. I think it's just responsible just to keep it where it is.
Anyone else?
This is not one that I would
Yeah.
die on the hill for, because I'll be in the lottery probably. But all I can say is a 25-foot slip over at Safe Harbor without power, without water,
Mhm.
$2,500
Mhm.
for the season. So it's still a bargain for resident or non-resident alike. Jamie, just a quick question. Do you feel comfortable that sort of we're getting the word out that, malarkey it's not going to be tolerated, the renting your pontoon boat out, doing a swapsy deal with your friend who's going to lease you their boat for the season and,
Yeah, I'll send the email blast out. I have the, right here, I have a copy of the policy, in there. When I send the, email blast out, I'm gonna send that out on the 24th. I'm gonna put a copy of the policy and procedures in there for the residents to see and who is gonna be applying.
I think
And
that's
if I,
wise.
like years before, like last year, just kind of tap into legal counsel for questions that I have with
Good.
applications that come in that I may have see red flags on. So I work with them.
Perfect.
Logan?
What is the enforcement policy on something that's, I mean, I'm sure it's long, but is there a fee that can be assigned to people who are renting things out or doing goofy stuff?
I think the
And-
sheriff's department was
Kicked
called a
out,
couple of
yeah.
times,
Okay,
but I
no.
don't know if they ever were kicked out.
Would an idea be like some sort of, or like people who are essentially committing fraud by
Yeah.
having other people's boats and whatnot in there? Is there like a deposit that they could put down or something that's like returned with good behavior or
Yeah.
something, especially since it's like a public good or something?
Well, number 10 right here, then we cease the lease
There's a
agreement.
Okay.
they can revoke the license. or
Mhm.
Just
the
cancel
lease.
it and they do not get a refund on their
Right. Application. fee.
application. So it would move to the next person in line. I keep a tally of who would be next and they would be offered the slip.
And Jamie, if somebody has violated it in the past, do you say, no way, you don't get to apply again?
That might be a question for legal counsel because we might run into that this year.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, just to comment to council, I know we worked with the city clerk last summer on an interesting situation. My memory is that we did discuss with the city clerk potentially not only revoking the license, but then deciding that we would suspend the ability to participate in future lotteries. So I know we had that conversation. I can't right now tell you where we concluded, but it was an option that we were willing to explore and use as a sort of response to the situation that we consulted with the city clerk on. So we're happy to close the loop with her on that. I think, likely my sort of answer would be yes, that we would be able to disqualify them from participating in the lottery since it's the city's lottery. It's our policy and how we want to administer it.
Right.
I can't remember what we said about that.
I think it was just being handled.
yeah.
I like the idea, though. I think that there should be teeth to it. You know what I mean? Not to let people just try to slide in every time or wherever. There should be something more to it that's not going to have to keep us on our toes all the time to make sure you're not trying to,
Right, pull a fast
Pull
one.
it
fraud
over.
the system. Yeah.
So Councilmember Muncy, I did bring one to council to vote on. And you did
Yes.
vote that no. That was somebody else that was trying to run through with someone else's boat registered elsewhere.
Right,
But we did have one internally. There was somebody that won the lottery and was actually running his business out of there, a boat rental business.
oh,
That's the one we're talking about right now. That did
Okay.
not come to council, that we were working with legal counsel on that.
okay,
Yeah,
thank you for
you're
clarifying that. Yeah, I was thinking of that
Yeah,
one.
I
Yeah,
thought so.
okay. Yeah, and another question real quick, the fee's not going up, right? You're asking for the same that we've had since 2000.
Yeah, that's what we were asking right
There is
now. If
no
there's no
increase.
one,
And
if,
2000, like you said, Scott, that's a really good deal.
Yeah.
For a slip around here.
Yeah, and that's for a non-resident. A resident would be 1,800, so.
Are these, would that be a question for Peter? Are these monies, is that earmarked or does that just go into a general fund, to keep, updated, to keep that area updated? Or
That
does
is
that
good.
just go into a general, our general?
Does it
fund?
just go to the general fund, Ryan?
I do believe it does.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
Not enterprise fund or anything like that.
Okay.
because with the increase and we said we had to do work on it. I'd just be curious to know,
Yeah.
how much work we had done on it or
We had new boards put in and new cleats and things put
Okay.
in, so.
during the flooding or whatever.
Yeah, it's just, they were old boards and
Okay.
they redid those and they look great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right, let's move on to item 6J, summer tax collection. Is Peter? Or would you like to handle this, Ryan?
So he'll be on the call on Monday.
Okay. Okay, anybody have questions on it?
Yeah, this is probably a dumb question, but so the summer taxes, that is just all for the schools. And those are the taxes, the only taxes the schools
I think
get. I mean, is that how that works?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I think it's just approving the fact that it's going to
Right.
Saugatuck Public Schools and the Ottawa ISD.
Okay,
Yeah.
but do all
Last
summer
year too,
taxes
right?
go to the schools?
Yeah. I don't know how that works.
Okay, it was just a weird wonder.
Other than, I think there's just back in 1983, it
Right.
was developed that our taxes go to, yes, exactly.
But
It's
this
been
is just a
going on.
Bureaucratic
Yeah,
administrative thing that
yes.
we're, okay.
Yeah, just to
That's what- I
make
feel
sure
like I
that it's
remember this one,
happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's important.
Well, and, the agreement with the Ottawa ISD, if there's ever an Allegan ISD, if that ever changes, but right now we still have the agreement with the Ottawa ISD, and that's where our kids go to. Tech Center is in Holland, in Ottawa County, and that's why our taxes go towards that. Okay, I feel good about that. All right. Now on to 6K, that's the right-of-way sign from the CVB, that's page 181, and that is just for an event that's coming up. Lisa Mize is online. Did you want to handle that, Lisa? It sounds fun. It's for the Mardi Gras celebration, and there's a sign that would go on the pallet sign. Does anybody have any questions on that?
It's their 5th anniversary
Yeah.
and it's gonna be with that great band, the Great Lakes Brass Band.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. We'll probably sponsor again at Back to the Fuchsia and join in the parade.
Good.
Fred
Any
Milbank
other
is a
questions
character
on it?
Who runs that?
Madam Mayor, might be a
Oh,
good
that
time
guy.
to talk to Lisa. Sorry, Lisa, put you on the spot about the new hire at the CVB.
Yeah, Lisa, if you would want to talk about April's hiring.
Sure, I couldn't hear Russ.
That
But
was
yeah.
Ryan.
I'm
It was
kidding.
Ryan Heiss.
Oh, sorry, Ryan. Sure, it was official. I'm sure everybody saw the article in the paper. Scott actually did a really good job. We've hired April Gundy as the event coordinator. She's it's a contract position. And she'll be taking care of all the events in Saugatuck and a couple in Douglas as well. And if things go well, we're going to evaluate at the end of the year and see how happy everybody was. And if everything goes well, then we may extend it to Fenville as well.
And Lisa, it's Lauren Stanton. There were some questions online about some of the events that April is not in charge of. But there are some events that have, great organizers that take care of, various things.
Absolutely.
So she might not be in charge of all of the events, just
Correct.
a handful of events.
Correct. Obviously, Rotary's got Venetian, the trails, the Blue Star, Friends of the Blue Star Trail has the Harvest ride. Yeah, she's not handling all the events,
Yeah.
but basically she's taking over the events that Sadaba was in charge of.
Anybody have any questions?
I'm excited that April's taken this role. I think it's great for the tri-community area. I still would suggest it would be probably valuable for all the people that are involved, all the entities that are involved in events in Saugatuck and Douglas in particular, to have a summit meeting where sort of people can coordinate, network and sort of just have in their minds how the year is going to play out. And I think, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
Do you have
And
that?
do that.
Maybe I missed it.
We do that every year in November.
Okay.
Typically the first or second week of November, everybody meets at the CVB. Anybody who organizes an event, and we put together an annual calendar and then push it back out to everybody. The initial idea behind that was not just to get all the events on a calendar, but it was also to encourage collaboration between the different organizations to make existing events even bigger and better.
Wonderful. You're way ahead of me. Thank you.
Lisa, thank you so much. And again, we're thanking the Saugatuck Douglas Convention and Visitors Bureau for taking this on. Thanks to your members for voting on this and making this happen because we really needed it. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Can I offer one
Yeah,
thing, or
go
that I'm
ahead.
curious about, and I don't know if this is a place, but it's a workshop. I think that we need to get out in front of making sure people understand that the city's not gonna be in charge of the 4th of July.
Sure.
So whatever's gonna be planned or not planned, I think that that's really important, that folks don't have this expectation that we're not sitting here on June 10th going, yeah, I don't know what's going on. We're not gonna
Right, like that.
fireworks and a DJ. Yeah, so
Lisa, is that something that April was planning on taking over, is the 4th of July
The par-
events?
The parade, yes.
Okay,
Fireworks, I'm not so sure about.
okay. We can talk to April about her thoughts on that.
I
and
didn't think that
but-
she was, but so I don't know what the story is there, or if there's anybody else that's.
Jamie has an observation.
I've been communicating with April, so I could email out you a list of dates and events that are on the books for her,
Okay,
if that would help you.
sure.
Okay,
That'd be great.
I can do that tomorrow.
And
Jamie.
we had a business owner, Mike Johnson, for fireworks. Is that just for Venetian Festival he talked about, or?
I know that he has said that he's gonna do the fireworks for Venetian.
Okay.
But I know in the past, he said he was gonna do them for 4th of July. I don't know how that all pans out or whatever. I just, and I'm not interested in controlling anyone else in the city or whatever. I just think it's important that we as a city get out in front of people and make sure that they understand that we're not doing fireworks. If you want fireworks, you're gonna have to find a way to apply, raise the funds and all that stuff. So I think that that's really important, because that's where we landed, as far as I remember last year, is that
Right.
we're out of the firework throwing business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think it's important that people aren't, like you said, I mean,
Surprised, yeah,
right,
we're
they're not
gonna-
gonna be surprised,
Yeah.
and they're not gonna expect us to
Right.
be the organizers of that event.
Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I would say, and I'm sure Councilmember Muncy can substantiate this in my experience. The 4th of July has been an event that's been sponsored by Sadaba perhaps, or Sparkle back in the day. And they would request money from the city, they would request money from the village of Douglas, and I think the township for contributions to their fireworks display. I would expect that to be the mode this year. I don't know who that's going to be, but that would be my expectation of what the city would be asked to do to that, plus some of the public safety stuff.
Yeah.
So, and not that we would be sponsoring anything, we'd just be asked to contribute to someone else's efforts.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Someone's probably got a
Correct.
better memory than me, but I think it's in our budget, right? There was a line item.
Yeah, we usually do have a line item about 5,000.
So the idea
for-
being, we donate, but somebody else is in charge of it.
Correct.
Fills out an application,
I
finds
feel-
a vendor,
yeah.
hires the person. all that
Yes.
stuff,
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody else is in charge of the planning of it
You know, once again.
and submitting the applications and all of those.
And raising
things.
the funds.
And raising the funds.
Mhm.
Okay.
Since we're on the subject, though, I'm glad we brought it up. I mean, Jamie, have you heard from Mr. Johnson yet about
Fourth of
his
July.
interest in the 4th of July?
Okay.
Lisa, have you or April, to your knowledge, heard from Mr. Johnson about the 4th of July?
I have not heard from Mr. Johnson. I know that it was brought up at the latest Venetian committee meeting, that someone was gonna reach out to him and try to get a commitment.
Okay, do we know who that is?
Helen, do you remember?
I would just hate to see one thing fall through the cracks. That's a
Mhm.
pretty important thing.
I don't know, but I also know that that was for Venetian, not 4th of July.
Correct.
So I find it hard to believe that Mike, I mean, I think, look, he didn't put up any for either last year. It's hard to believe he's gonna do both.
That's a lot.
So,
Right, that's a lot to ask.
I'm just saying that, and again, I don't care what Mike Johnson does or doesn't do. I care about how things reflect on the city. If we
Sure.
want to donate $5,000 to somebody else who's going to do the fundraising, fine, but I think we have to be out in front of it, make sure people know like, hey,
It's a good
over
point.
here, we're
Yeah,
not doing it.
It's a good
So-
point. It's a good
Yeah,
point.
I precisely, and I guess Helen, my point is just to ensure that possible donors, supporters, sponsors know that the handoff has occurred and the handoff has been made. That's the part that worries me.
Yeah,
And also maybe who it is, so there aren't multiple competing
Yeah,
firework.
or nobody.
Yeah, or nobody is also the idea.
I see Mr. Johnson regularly. I'll ask him next time I see him, which
That's
will
great.
be, and I'll
Thanks,
just
Russ.
see where he is on it.
All right, Russ, thank you.
Sure.
All right, if there's nothing else on that, then we're moving to public comment on whatever you'd like to comment on, but there's nobody in the room. Public comment, anybody online? Lisa, would you like to say anything more? Because you're the only other.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. You'll see that there is correspondence from Catherine Simon that's on page 183. Now on to council comments. Holly, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Yeah, two quick things. One, I got to ride in the snowplow after Helen rode in the snowplow. RIP your mailbox, Lauren.
You heard the mailbox story.
But it was so cool to plow the streets with Scott, or have Scott, be in the truck when Scott plowed. And there is an art to snow plowing, so who knew? It was totally cool. And then if you have not yet looked at the planning commission packet for Thursday, do. It's filled, we're really getting some great traction on short-term rentals, and Ryan and Jake and Dave Jurassic have put a lot of thought into some of the low-hanging fruit police power. So that's outlined there. We're going to have 2 guest speakers, one from Charlevoix and one from East Bay Township, to talk about their experiences. So if you can't attend the meeting, definitely check it out on Zoom, because there will be great information that will be coming our way at some point.
Good, thanks, Holly.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, the only comment I would have is, and I mentioned that at our last meeting, I would like to see on the workshop agenda a review of our current city boards and committees. I know we did that last year during our strategic planning session over at the Yacht Club, and I would like to see us revisit that this year. There's some things that need to be updated.
Okay, thank you.
I know, like Holly, I did go on the snowplow, and it was awesome. And I was questioning the judgment of getting up, agreeing to go, and I was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be down there at 4, but knocking over your mailbox made up for any kind of reservation I may have otherwise had, because that was amazing. And yeah, that's all. I really enjoyed myself.
Good, good. Scott?
Once, just at the risk of piling on, no pun intended, I just think DPW has done a great job with this extreme weather we've had over the past several days. So just compliments to the city staff. If you could relay that, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Gregory?
No, just, 2 things real quick. We have a new board member at the Interurban serving on Douglas side. Since the passing of Maria, we had to fill a spot. Or Marie, I'm sorry, we had to fill a spot, and it is Chuck Gustafson.
Gustafson.
Chuck's role?
Yep, and he's a great addition. He's been both a writer and he drove for us for 5 years, up until about COVID time. So he's a great addition to the board. He's local and he's well vested in the community. So we're happy to have him on the board. Also, we have a new business coming to downtown Saugatuck, and it's a bakery. No, not Retro Bakery. It's a different bakery.
Oh.
And it's going to be downtown. And if you want to find out who the owners are and where it's going to be, you'll have to tune into 92.7 of AM this Sunday, 7 to 9 AM.
That's really nice.
Okay, you tease. All right, Logan?
Can't follow that. There's no-
No. Well, Logan, if you don't have anything, just a big thanks to Jamie. This was a very beefy packet. And I know some of the stuff probably came in on the later side. So just thank you for getting it all in. That's a lot. I
I
appreciate it.
didn't answer because I was hugging your son.
Oh.
I don't think she wanted to.
Matt
So big thanks to Jamie, big thanks to DPW for all their hard work, even if they did knock out the mayor's mailbox. But the structural integrity of my mailbox
Structural
was
integrity,
lacking.
yeah.
That's what I heard. That's been going around town.
It was janky. So I've been online looking for a new one, but it's back up so I can get my mail. But yeah, and thanks you guys for doing that and riding along with DPW.
Still fun. I recommend it if you haven't done it. It's
I
worth
love
getting
it.
up, and yeah, it's really, and you get a new perspective. I mean, there's definitely an art to it, and it takes forever. You think you just run down and clear all the snow? No, there's several passes and back
So
and forth,
good,
and yes,
so
lots to happen.
Thanks to Helen for taking 4 AM. shift.
Yeah. That's a whole
Right.
other topic.
At this point, if I could have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All right. All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Thanks, you guys.